Please welcome your 2025 Nitro Funny Car Champion for the second year running, Austin Prock.
1 minute ago, investigators searching Austin Prock's private garage uncovered items no one expected, documents, prototype components, and confidential racing notes that raised serious questions about his sudden departure from JFR. Authorities weren't prepared for what they found, and neither was John Force. It started quietly, no sirens, no commotion, just two unmarked vehicles pulling up to a beige garage on the outskirts of Brownsburg. Neighbors said investigators arrived just after sunrise, responding to what they described as a routine check. But the moment the officers stepped inside Austin Prock's private workshop, the tone shifted instantly. This wasn't a messy racer's garage filled with spare parts and half-finished projects. This was something far more deliberate. The lights flicked on, revealing a space organized with surgical precision. Tool chests aligned perfectly, workbenches spotless, crates stacked and labeled, binders arranged alphabetically. Investigators expected clutter. Instead, they found a workspace that looked less like a hobby shop and more like a laboratory. But the real shock came seconds later. On the center table were documents stamped confidential. Blueprints rolled tightly with color-coded tabs and sealed containers marked with cryptic labels referencing prototype systems and tuning maps. Some items appeared untouched. Others looked like they'd been inspected recently, maybe even overnight. Nothing illegal. Nothing stolen at first glance. Yet everything felt like it shouldn't have been there. One investigator whispered, "Why would a driver have this?" Another responded, "Why would he hide it?" By the time the garage door slid shut behind them, the search had escalated from routine to urgent. It was clear Austin Prock had been working on something big, something private, something advanced, something no one expected. And this discovery was only the beginning. The official report made it sound routine. A noise complaint, a zoning inquiry, maybe a suspicion of unauthorized mechanical work. But investigators later admitted privately that the call to Austin Prock's garage didn't come from a neighbor. It came from someone inside the racing world. An anonymous tip describing equipment being operated outside NHRA regulations and materials not suitable for a private residence. At first, authorities assumed the tip was exaggerated. Drivers often modified their own cars on personal property. But the tipster mentioned something that changed everything. Austin's working on things he didn't walk away with. That phrase raised eyebrows. Was it a misunderstanding? A rivalry? A disgruntled insider? Investigators couldn't be sure. But because Austin had recently left JFR under mysterious circumstances, the call couldn't be ignored. When authorities arrived, they expected to find an overactive workshop. Fans running late, engines being tested, maybe a violation or two. Nothing more. But the minute they stepped inside, they realized the tipster had understated the situation. This wasn't unauthorized mechanical tinkering. This was organized research. Quiet, technical, methodical. The deeper they moved into the garage, the more questions they had. Why did Austin have engineering-grade measurement tools normally found only in manufacturer facilities? Why were there sealed document boxes labeled by season and test session? Why were some containers marked with dates after the day he left JFR? Suddenly, the call didn't feel routine anymore. It felt like someone knew exactly what investigators would find. When the garage door slid open, investigators were prepared for clutter. Old tires stacked in corners, oil cans, spare engine blocks, scattered notes. Instead, they found a space that looked more like a controlled development cell than a personal workshop. The first thing that caught their eyes were the binders, neatly arranged, meticulously labeled, each containing tuning notes, aerodynamic sketches, data sheets, and performance logs. Many were dated during Austin's final months with JFR. Some even extended beyond his departure. Investigators paused. These weren't simple racing notes. They looked like complete development packages. Next, they noticed rolls of blueprint paper on a drafting table. Not amateur scribbles, professional-grade schematics, throttle body redesigns, fuel mapping adjustments, even conceptual chassis modifications. One investigator whispered, "This is stuff teams spend millions to produce." But the most unsettling discovery came from a metal shelf near the back wall. Sealed crates stamped with codes that didn't match any known NHRA-approved systems. Written on one crate was a phrase that made investigators exchange looks. Rev 4, not final. Private use only. The items weren't illegal, but they weren't normal for a driver to possess without a dedicated engineering team. Somebody was working on a project, organized, sophisticated, and extremely private. By this point, investigators realized Austin wasn't just storing parts, he was building something. As investigators cataloged the garage, they opened a crate that immediately caused concern. Inside were prototype components, pieces that looked refined yet unfinished, engineered but unapproved. These weren't items a driver typically creates independently. One box contained early-stage fuel delivery modules with adjustable pressure systems, not seen in NHRA competition. Another held clutch plates with unconventional cross-cut designs. A third crate stored aerodynamic components shaped unlike any current funny car or top fuel attachment. Investigators checked serial numbers. None matched anything on file. Then they found the most alarming crate. Its lid marked only with Austin's initials, and a date 2 months after his departure from JFR. Inside was a partially assembled engine component with custom machining and stamped annotations. It appeared to be part of a larger system, something meant to increase efficiency, consistency, or power output. One investigator muttered, "This is R&D, but whose?" Nothing inside the garage broke laws, but everything inside it broke expectations. Drivers don't have access to this level of engineering unless they're backed by a team. So who helped him? Who funded this? And why was he hiding it? The investigation shifted instantly. This was no longer a zoning check. It was an inquiry into whether Austin Prock had been preparing for something outside the public eye, something that might explain exactly why he walked away from JFR. While the prototype parts were concerning, the handwritten notebooks found beside them raised even more questions. Investigators discovered a stack of yellow legal pads, engineering graph paper, and leather-bound journals, all filled with Austin Prock's distinct handwriting. At first glance, the notes appeared to be typical driver feedback. Lap, consistency issues, fuel curve adjustments, clutch timing observations. But as investigators flipped deeper into the pages, the tone shifted dramatically. Austin had documented months of frustration, entries describing disagreements with crew chiefs, repeated conversations he felt were ignored, and subtle comments about being boxed in creatively. Several pages were nearly therapeutic, written late at night, the handwriting uneven. "They think I'm overreacting, but something isn't right with the setup. It keeps drifting. No one listens. I know what the car needs. I feel it." But one line froze investigators. "If they won't test my theory, I'll run the numbers myself." It became clear Austin wasn't stealing data. He was recording what the team wouldn't address. Further into the notebooks, investigators found detailed calculations, mixture ratios, airflow variances, combustion anomalies, all cross-referenced with the prototype parts found in the garage. Austin wasn't improvising. He was following a method. One page stood out more than any other. "This isn't about leaving the team. It's about proving what no one wanted to hear." The notes transformed the investigation. This wasn't sabotage. It wasn't rebellion. It was the story of a driver whose ideas were dismissed and who quietly decided to validate them himself. Among the items seized, investigators found a black, heavily protected laptop on a workbench. It was warm, meaning Austin had used it recently. But when they powered it on, they discovered it was locked behind layers of passwords and encryption, far beyond what a casual hobbyist would use. Tech analysts were brought in. It took nearly 3 hours to access the system. Once inside, the content stunned them. The laptop wasn't filled with personal files or random downloads. It contained complete digital logs of test simulations, airflow modeling, combustion temperature graphs, and acceleration projections, data that would normally be processed by a full engineering team. But the real shock came from a deleted folder that investigators managed to recover. Project Clean Break. Inside were dozens of documents. Engine dyno simulations. Stress tests for prototype parts. Aerodynamic tunnel comparison charts. Possible team structures for an independent racing program. Current estimates for starting a small-scale development shop. One document titled Phase 3, after JFR, included sketches of vehicle layouts Austin had never driven or publicly discussed. Another file contained a short note, chilling in its simplicity. Not leaving out of anger, leaving to build something from scratch. Investigators realized Austin hadn't been preparing to sabotage anything. He'd been preparing to reinvent himself. The laptop didn't expose wrongdoing. It exposed ambition and a detailed plan he didn't want anyone to see until it was perfect. As investigators reviewed the notebooks, prototypes, and digital files, a clear timeline began to emerge. Austin's dissatisfaction didn't happen suddenly. It developed slowly, starting months before his departure from John Force Racing. The deeper the investigators dug, the more they understood Austin wasn't pushed out. He was preparing to step out on his own terms. His notes revealed an escalating series of internal disagreements, most of them technical. He felt the car was inconsistent in ways no one acknowledged. He believed certain tuning decisions were outdated. He tried bringing ideas forward, but felt overshadowed by hierarchy and tradition. One journal entry read, "Hard to innovate when everything is built on legacy." Investigators now had context for the prototype parts. Austin had been quietly testing concepts he believed JFR would never approve. Experimental tuning, new airflow strategies, alternative fuel delivery solutions. Not to cheat, but to explore what he believed could make a better, safer, more consistent run. When investigators connected the timestamps of his digital work with JFR's performance logs, a pattern appeared. Austin ran simulations on nights after difficult race weekends, when he felt ignored or dismissed. The blueprint folder dated after his departure clearly proved he wasn't trying to hurt JFR. He was trying to rebuild his identity without them. A clean break, a fresh direction. What investigators uncovered was not evidence of misconduct, but evidence of a young driver quietly suffocating under the weight of tradition, pressure, and unspoken expectations. And the deeper they looked, the clearer the truth became. Austin didn't leave JFR because he wanted distance. He left because he needed freedom. When investigators briefed JFR about the contents of Austin's garage, the reaction inside the team was immediate and emotional. But no one was more shaken than John Force himself. The report didn't accuse Austin of wrongdoing, yet the level of detail, planning, and experimentation found in his garage landed like a punch to the chest. John admitted to investigators that he had no idea Austin had been working this extensively behind the scenes. He knew the young driver was frustrated at times, felt unheard in certain meetings, and wanted more control over tuning decisions. But he never imagined Austin was building full simulations, prototypes, and independent designs. "He didn't tell me," John said it quietly. "I wish he did." I would have listened." His voice cracked when he saw photos of the handwritten notes describing stress, being ignored, and feeling boxed into a system built around legacy. Investigators later said John looked less like a team owner being updated, and more like a father, realizing he had missed signs of his son's struggles. What hit him hardest was discovering the clean break folder. "This wasn't betrayal," John murmured. "This was a kid trying to breathe." John defended Austin fiercely. He didn't accuse him of disloyalty or misconduct. Instead, he expressed regret. Regret that he hadn't been more available, more attentive, more willing to let the young driver express himself creatively. He told investigators, "Austin didn't leave because he wanted out of racing. He left because he needed a place he could grow. And I didn't give him that." It was the most honest reflection John had made since Austin's departure. And for the first time, the emotional gap between them became painfully clear. After days of reviewing documents, interviewing personnel, and analyzing the items collected from the garage, investigators reached a clear and definitive conclusion. Austin Prock had committed no crime. Nothing in the garage constituted theft, sabotage, or unauthorized possession of proprietary technology. Everything they found, notes, prototypes, simulations, belonged to Austin. His ideas, his handwriting, his personal conceptual work. What investigators did conclude, however, was that Austin had spent months quietly building the foundation of something bigger. An independent vision for what the next generation of racing could look like. They found no evidence that he intended to use the prototypes maliciously or commercially. Instead, everything pointed toward Austin, trying to understand problems he felt were never addressed within JFR. One investigator summarized it best in his report. Prock wasn't developing competitive secrets. He was developing personal clarity. The case was closed without further action. No legal consequences, no sanctions, no claims filed by JFIR. But the findings created a ripple effect in the racing community. Fans questioned whether Austin had been underestimated. Teams wondered what he might be planning next. And insiders privately admitted, someone with this level of technical curiosity and independence doesn't just disappear into the background. Austin hadn't left JFR out of conflict. He left because he had a vision too big to fit inside walls built for someone else. In their final sweep of the garage, investigators opened one last blueprint tube. Long, heavy, sealed with black electrical tape. Inside was a set of documents that immediately stood out from everything else discovered. At the top, written in bold ink, were 3 letters, a P1, Austin Prock's initials, and beneath them, a subtitle, Concept Platform, Personal Project. The blueprints were stunning. Not replicas, not modified JFR designs, not borrowed technology. They were original. A fully conceptualized race platform Austin had been quietly developing. An engine configuration, an aerodynamic package, fuel mapping concepts, and chassis modifications unlike anything he had ever competed in. The designs were incomplete but bold, risky, innovative. The kind of ideas young engineers dream of testing but rarely get the chance to explore. This was not rebellion. This was creation. Investigators realized the truth. Austin wasn't hiding stolen technology. He was hiding his potential. He wasn't preparing to undermine JFR. He was preparing to build something that reflected his own identity as both a driver and an innovator. One line at the bottom of the blueprint captured the entire story. "Someday, I'll build the car that finally makes sense." When investigators closed the search, they understood something John Force would later admit. Austin Prock didn't walk away from JFR because of conflict, disrespect, or failure. He walked away because he was evolving, and evolution rarely fits within the boundaries of tradition. In the end, the garage didn't reveal scandal. It revealed purpose. Austin wasn't hiding secrets. He was hiding a future he wasn't ready to reveal. until now.